Hi, I'm glad you're here tonight. If you've been holding a lot lately, quietly, without really telling anyone how heavy it's gotten, this video is for you. Not to fix it in one night, just to help you set some of it down, gently, so you can finally rest. You don't have to explain anything to me. You don't have to have the right words for what you're feeling. You just have to lie still. Let your eyes close whenever they're ready, and let my voice carry the thinking for a while. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Carrying it quietly. There's a particular kind of tired that comes from carrying something heavy without anyone knowing. Not because you're hiding it on purpose, but because it's easier to just keep going than to explain how much you're actually holding. Maybe it's a worry about money. Maybe it's a strain in a relationship. Maybe it's just the accumulated weight of 100 small things nobody would think to ask about, stacked on top of each other until they became one large, quiet burden you carry through your days, smiling when you need to, functioning when you need to, while something heavier sits underneath the whole time. The old Stoic teachers understood this kind of quiet weight well, even in a world without the specific pressures we carry now. They knew that most people walk through life holding more than they show, and that the truest kindness, often, is simply recognizing that in yourself, without judgment. Tonight, you don't have to keep performing that you're fine. Not here, not with me. You can let the weight be exactly as heavy as it actually is, without needing to minimize it, without needing to have already solved it. Just let it be here for a moment. Honestly, in this quiet room, with nobody watching, nobody judging, nobody needing you to explain it perfectly. That alone is a kind of relief, even before anything else changes. Chapter 2. The myth of handling it alone. Somewhere along the way, many of us picked up the idea that being strong means handling everything by ourselves, without leaning on anyone, without asking for help, without letting the weight show. But this idea, however common, was never actually true. No one, not even the strongest, most capable people you know, gets through life entirely alone. Everyone leans on someone, or something, at some point. A friend, a family member, a stranger's small kindness, even simply time itself, passing slowly and softening what once felt unbearable. The belief that you have to carry everything alone isn't strength. It's often just isolation, dressed up to look like independence. And it's exhausting. In a way that quietly wears a person down over time, even when they don't fully notice it happening. Tonight, I want to gently push back on that belief. You were never actually meant to carry everything by yourself. Needing support isn't weakness. It's simply part of being human, the same way every person before you has needed it too, even the ones who looked, from the outside, like they never did. You don't have to solve this belief tonight. Just let it loosen slightly. Let yourself imagine, even briefly, what it might feel like to share some of this weight with someone. Someday, when you're ready. For now, just notice that the alone feeling, however real it feels, was never actually the full truth. Chapter 3. What you've been protecting others. From sometimes we carry weight quietly, because we're trying to protect the people around us, not wanting to worry them, not wanting to be a burden, not wanting to add our struggles onto whatever they're already dealing with. This instinct often comes from a good place. A real care for the people you love, but it can also become its own kind of loneliness, a wall built out of good intentions that ends up keeping you from the very connection and support you actually need. The people who care about you would likely want to know, at least in some way, that you're struggling, not so they can fix it necessarily, but simply so you're not carrying it entirely by yourself, unseen. While they go about their days, with no idea how much you're holding. Tonight, you don't have to decide to open up to anyone. That's a decision for daylight, for a clearer mind. but you can, at least here, in this quiet room, admit to yourself how much you've been protecting others from, and notice how tiring that protection has become. You're allowed to need support too. Protecting others doesn't mean erasing your own need for care. Chapter 4. The difference between alone and lonely. There's a difference between being physically alone and feeling lonely, and it's worth noticing which one you're actually experiencing tonight. Being alone simply means no one else is in the room. It's neutral, sometimes even peaceful. Loneliness is different. It's the ache of feeling unseen, unheard, disconnected, even sometimes while surrounded by other people. If tonight feels lonely, rather than simply quiet, that ache deserves acknowledgement, not dismissal. It's telling you something real. That connection matters to you. That being truly seen by someone matters. That carrying things silently has taken a toll. You don't have to solve the loneliness tonight, but you can, at least, name it honestly, instead of pushing it aside as something to just get over. Naming it is often the first small step toward eventually easing it, even if that easing takes time. For tonight, let the loneliness simply be witnessed, here, by yourself, in this quiet moment. That witnessing matters more than it might seem. Chapter 5. Small signs. You've been carrying too much. Sometimes we don't fully realize how much weight we've been carrying until we notice the small signs, the tiredness that sleep doesn't seem to fix, the shortness of patience over small things, the sense of being slightly braced, all the time, for something to go wrong. These signs aren't weakness. They're simply what a person carrying too much, for too long, without enough support, tends to look like from the inside. If you've noticed some of these signs in yourself lately, I want you to receive that noticing gently, not as criticism, but as useful information. Your mind and body have been trying to tell you something. That the weight has gotten heavier than it should be carried alone, and that some kind of relief, whatever form it eventually takes, is genuinely needed. Tonight, simply acknowledging this is enough. You don't need a plan yet. You just need to recognize honestly that you've been carrying more than most people around you realize, and that recognition itself is a form of care. Chapter 6. What would change if you set it down? Take a moment to imagine, just for tonight, what it might feel like to set this weight down, even briefly. Not forever, not completely. Just for these next couple of hours while you rest. What would your shoulders feel like without the tension they've been holding? What would your breathing feel like without the tightness in your chest that's become so familiar it barely registers anymore? You don't have to actually solve anything to experience a small taste of that relief tonight. You can simply imagine it vividly and let your body respond as if it were already happening. Shoulders softening, jaw unclenching, chest loosening, just slightly, just for now. This isn't pretending the weight doesn't exist. It's simply practicing what it feels like to not carry it every single moment, so that your body remembers this is possible, even amid a hard season. Chapter 7. The Stoic View on Shared Burden. The old philosophers believed strongly in community, in the idea that humans were never meant to live entirely separate from each other, each person managing everything privately, alone. They saw mutual support, not as a weakness to be avoided, but as one of the most natural, necessary parts of a good life. Helping each other, leaning on each other, sharing both burdens and joys. This was considered part of living well, not a failure of independence. If you've been treating your struggles as something to manage entirely alone, this old idea offers a gentler alternative. You were never meant to be an island handling everything privately. You were meant, like every person before you, to sometimes lean, sometimes ask, sometimes simply let someone else carry a small part of what feels too heavy for one person alone. Tonight, let that idea settle in. even if you're not ready to act on it yet. You don't have to earn the right to lean on someone. It's simply part of what it means to be humans. Chapter 8. Carrying weight from the past. Sometimes the weight we carry isn't only from today. It includes older things too. Past hurts, old disappointments, things left unresolved from years ago that quietly still live in us, adding their own weight to whatever we're dealing with now. This layered weight can feel especially heavy because it's not just today's struggle. It's today's struggles sitting on top of years of things never fully processed, never fully released. You don't need to untangle all of that tonight. That's work for a longer process, possibly with support from someone trained to help with it. But you can at least acknowledge that some of tonight's heaviness might be older than today's, and that it's okay for healing something like that to take real time. You're not failing by still carrying some of the past. You're simply human, carrying a full, complicated history, doing the best you can with all of it. Chapter 9. What it means to be truly seen. There's a particular relief that comes from being truly seen by another person. Not just observed, but actually understood, weight and all, without needing to hide the harder parts. Not everyone gets this kind of seeing often, and that absence can itself become a heavy thing to carry, layered on top of whatever else is already weighing on you. Tonight, even without another person physically present, I want you to feel, at least a little, what it's like to simply be witnessed. Whatever you're carrying, grief, worry, exhaustion, quiet fear, it's allowed to exist here, without needing to be minimized or explained away. You are seen tonight, at least in this small way. That's not nothing. Sometimes it's exactly the relief a tired person needs most. Chapter 10. The courage it takes to keep going. It's worth naming something clearly tonight. Continuing to show up, day after day, while carrying something heavy and mostly unseen, takes real courage, even though it rarely feels like courage from the inside. Courage isn't only the loud, dramatic kind. Often, it's quieter than that. Getting up on a hard morning, going through a full day while holding something heavy, being kind to others even while struggling yourself. If you've been doing this, quietly, for a while now, I want you to recognize it as the courage it actually is, rather than dismissing it as simply what anyone would do. Not everyone continues the way you have. You have, even on the hardest days. That deserves acknowledgement, especially from yourself, especially tonight. Chapter 11. On letting someone in. Someday you don't have to open up to anyone tonight. That's not what this moment is for. But somewhere ahead, when you're ready, there may be value in letting one person, just one, a little closer to what you've actually been carrying. This doesn't mean explaining everything at once, or finding the perfect words. It can start small, a single honest sentence, a small crack in the wall you've built to protect yourself and others. Even a small opening can begin to ease a weight that's been carried entirely alone for too long. There's no deadline on this. You don't have to decide who or when or how tonight. Just let the idea sit with you gently, as something possible, whenever you're ready for it, rather than something required of you right now. For tonight, simply resting is enough. The letting in can come later, in its own time. Chapter 12. The difference between needing help and being weak. There's an old, tired belief that needing help means something is wrong with you, that a truly capable person shouldn't need support from anyone else. But needing help has never actually meant weakness. It means being human, in a world that was never designed for any one person to handle everything alone. Even the strongest, most capable people you admire have needed help at some point, whether you saw it or not. If part of you has been avoiding help because it feels like admitting failure, I want to gently challenge that belief tonight. Asking for support, or simply admitting you're struggling, takes its own kind of strength, the strength of honesty, over the exhausting effort of pretending everything is fine. You don't have to reach out tonight, but you can at least release the belief that needing help makes you weak. That belief was never true for you or for anyone else. Chapter 9. What silence sometimes hides. Silence can look like calm from the outside, but sometimes it's hiding something much heavier underneath. Words unsaid, feelings unexpressed, a weight quietly carried because it never felt safe or easy to say out loud. If your silence has been hiding something like this, I want you to know that the silence itself is not a flaw. It likely developed for good reasons, protecting you at some point when speaking up wasn't safe or possible. But silence that once protected you can also, over time, become its own kind of weight, keeping you isolated even when you're no longer in the situation that first required it. Tonight, you don't need to break the silence completely. Just notice it honestly. Notice what it might be hiding. That noticing, quiet as it is a small but real step toward eventually feeling less alone with it. Chapter 14. When you are the one everyone leans on. For some people, the weight isn't only their own. It's also the weight of being the person others lean on. The one who holds things together, who others turn to when they're struggling. While rarely being asked how they themselves are doing, this role can be meaningful, even a source of pride. But it can also become exhausting, especially when no one thinks to check in on the person who's usually checking in on everyone else. If this describes you, I want you to know that you are allowed to need support too, even while being someone others depend on. Being strong for others doesn't mean you're required to be endlessly strong without ever needing to be held yourself. Tonight, you're allowed to simply be the one who needs rest without needing to hold anyone else up. Let that role rest for a while too. Chapter 15. Small comforts that count. In the middle of carrying something heavy, it's easy to overlook the small comforts that are actually still present. A warm blanket, a quiet room, a moment of stillness like this one, free from immediate demands. These small comforts don't erase the larger weight, but they matter, quietly, offering brief relief even in the middle of a hard season. Tonight, notice one small comfort available to you right now. The warmth of the bed beneath you, the quiet of the room, the simple fact that, for these next couple of hours, nothing else is being asked of you except to rest. Let that small comfort count for something tonight. It's not a solution to everything, but it's real and it's yours right now. Chapter 16. The practice of naming what's heavy. Sometimes, simply naming what feels heavy, even just to yourself, can create a small amount of relief, separate from actually solving it. Tonight, without needing to fix anything, try naming, quietly, in your own mind, what's been weighing on you lately. Not in detail, just a simple, honest acknowledgement. This has been hard. This has been heavy. I've been carrying more than I usually let myself admit. Naming it doesn't make the weight disappear, but it does something valuable. It moves the weight from a vague, formless heaviness into something more concrete, something you can eventually address, piece by piece, rather than facing it as one overwhelming, undefined mass. Let that naming happen gently tonight, without judgment, simply as an honest acknowledgement of what's actually been true. Chapter 17. On grieving quietly. Sometimes what we're carrying is a form of grief for a relationship that changed, an opportunity that passed, a version of life we once expected that didn't turn out the way we imagined. Grief like this doesn't always look like the grief we associate with loss of life. It can be quieter, less visible, easy to dismiss as something you should already be over. But it's real, and it deserves space, even when it doesn't fit the more obvious categories of grief people usually recognize. If you've been quietly grieving something, without fully naming it as grief. I want you to know that's allowed. You don't need permission to feel sad about something that mattered to you, even if others might not immediately understand why. Let that quiet grief simply exist tonight without judgment, without needing to be resolved before you're allowed to rest. Chapter 18. What you deserve. Even tired somewhere along the way, many of us absorb the belief that we have to earn rest, earn care, earn kindness, especially our own. But this was never actually true. You deserve rest simply because you're tired. You deserve care simply because you're human, carrying real weight through a real life. None of this needs to be earned through achievement or perfect behavior first. Tonight, let yourself receive care, even if part of you feels like you haven't done enough to deserve it. You have. Simply existing, simply continuing through hard days, has already earned you the right to rest well tonight. Chapter 19. The long nights that test us. Some nights are harder than others. The ones where sleep feels far away, where the weight feels especially heavy, where everything seems a little more overwhelming than usual. If tonight is one of those long, harder nights, I want you to know that it doesn't mean you're failing, or that things are getting worse overall. Difficult nights happen, even during otherwise okay stretches of life. They're simply part of the uneven, imperfect texture of being human. You don't have to fix tonight completely. You just have to get through it, one slow minute at a time, trusting that this particular night, however hard, will eventually pass, the way difficult nights always eventually do. Chapter 20. Letting go of. I should be over this by now. There's a specific kind of pressure that shows up when something has been weighing on us for a while. The belief that we should be over it by now, that continuing to struggle with it means something is wrong. But healing, processing, adjusting to hard things, none of it happens on a fixed schedule. Some things take longer than we expect, longer than feels reasonable, without that meaning anything has gone wrong. If you've been carrying something for longer than you think you should have, let go of that judgment tonight. There is no correct timeline for healing. You're allowed to still be working through something, at whatever pace it actually takes. Chapter 21. A different kind of strength. We often picture strength as pushing through without complaint, without needing anyone else, without ever showing the weight underneath. But there's another kind of strength, quieter and arguably more honest. The strength of admitting when something is hard, of allowing yourself to need support, of not pretending everything is fine when it isn't. This kind of strength doesn't get celebrated as loudly, but it's often more sustainable, more real, more connected to an actual, whole life than the exhausting performance of endless toughness. If you've been practicing the quieter kind of strength lately, even privately, even imperfectly, I want you to recognize it as real strength, not as a lesser version of the louder kind. Chapter 20. Trusting that help exists even in the middle of feeling alone with something. It's worth remembering that help, in some form, generally exists, even if you haven't found the right version of it yet. Whether that's a person, a professional, a community, or simply time and rest doing their quiet works. Support is rarely as completely absent as it feels during a hard, lonely night. You don't have to find that help tonight. You just have to trust that it's out there, somewhere, waiting to be found when you're ready to look for it, rather than believing you're truly and permanently on your own. Chapter the weight that isn't yours. Sometimes, part of what we carry isn't actually ours to begin with. Expectations placed on us by others, responsibility for things outside our control, guilt over situations we didn't cause and can't fully fix. Tonight, see if you can separate, even slightly, what's actually yours to carry from what was placed on you unfairly, or what you simply absorbed without ever agreeing to. You're allowed to set down the weight that was never truly yours. Carrying only what's genuinely yours is not selfish. It's simply honest, and it makes the load you do carry more manageable. Chapter 24. Forgiving yourself for struggling. If part of you has been quietly ashamed of how much you've been struggling lately, I want to offer something gentle. Struggling is not a failure. It's simply what happens when a person is carrying something genuinely heavy for a genuinely long time. You don't need to forgive yourself for something that was never actually wrong to begin with. Struggling under real weight is not weakness. It's simply an honest human response to a hard situation. Let go of the shame tonight if you can, even just a little. You haven't been failing. You've been carrying something hard the best way you knew how. Chapter 25. Small steps toward being known. Being fully known by someone else, weight and all, doesn't usually happen all at once. It happens gradually, through small steps, a small honest comment here, a slightly more open conversation there. Over time, with people who prove themselves safe to open up to, you don't have to take a big leap tonight. You can simply hold the idea of small steps, whenever you're ready, toward letting someone else see more of what you've actually been carrying. For now, simply resting, simply being honest with yourself in this quiet room, is a meaningful first step, even before anyone else is involved. Chapter 26. Releasing the performance of being fine. There's a particular exhaustion that comes from performing wellness, smiling through a hard week, saying, "I'm fine" when you're not. Keeping up appearances so no one worries, so no one asks too many questions, so nothing has to change. This performance often starts for good reasons. Maybe you didn't want to burden anyone. Maybe you didn't have the words yet. Maybe it simply felt safer to keep the mask on than to risk being truly seen, and somehow found lacking. But over time, a performance like this becomes its own heavy weight, layered on top of whatever you were already carrying, because now you're managing two things at once: the original struggle, and the ongoing effort of hiding it convincingly from everyone around you. Tonight, in this quiet room with no one watching, you don't have to perform anything. You can let your face be exactly as tired as it actually is. You can let your shoulders drop instead of holding them up in that practiced, presentable way. You can simply be, honestly, without needing to convince anyone, including yourself, that everything is fine. This isn't giving up. It's simply setting down a costume you've been wearing for longer than you probably realized. One that was never actually protecting you the way it once seemed to. Underneath it, there's simply a tired person, doing their best, deserving rest without needing to first prove they've earned it by seeming okay. Let the performance rest tonight, along with everything else. Nobody needs you to be fine right now. You only need to be here, breathing, resting. Real. Chapter 27. What your body has been holding long before your mind fully processes stress. Your body often already knows. Tight shoulders that never quite relax. A stomach that stays slightly unsettled, even on ordinary days. A jaw clenched, so consistently you've stopped noticing it's clenched at all. Your body has likely been holding on to the weight we've been talking about tonight, in ways your conscious mind hasn't fully registered. This isn't unusual. It's simply how stress often works, settling into muscle and posture and breath long before it's named clearly in words. Let's take a moment now to check in gently, without judgment, simply noticing. Notice your forehead. Is there tension there? A slight furrow that's become almost permanent. Let it soften even slightly. Notice your jaw. Let it unclench, even if it wants to tighten right back up. Just notice the difference, even briefly. Notice your shoulders, likely raised slightly higher than they need to be. Carried that way for so long it feels normal. Let them drop, degree by degree, as much as they're willing to tonight. Notice your chest, your breathing. Is it shallow, guarded, protecting something? Let each breath go a little deeper, a little slower, without forcing it. Notice your hands, maybe curled slightly, maybe holding tension without any task to hold on to. Let them go soft, open, resting. Your body has been working hard, holding this weight in ways you probably haven't fully appreciated. Thank it quietly for carrying you this far, and let it finally set some of that physical tension down tonight, alongside everything else. Chapter 28. On letting tears come. If they need to, if at any point tonight, tears come, whether you fully understand why or not, I want you to know that's allowed. You don't have to hold them back to seem composed. Even here, even alone. Tears are often simply the body's way of releasing pressure that's built up over time. Weight that's been held too long without an outlet. They're not a sign of weakness, or something to be embarrassed by, even in private. They're closer to a kind of relief, a natural response to finally allowing yourself to feel something you've been managing carefully, keeping contained, for longer than was probably healthy. If nothing comes tonight, that's also completely fine. Not everyone releases weight through tears, and there's no requirement that you should. But if they do come, let them. Let your breath catch if it needs to. Let your chest feel tight and then, slowly, looser again. This isn't falling apart. This is simply your body doing what it's needed to do for a while now, finally given permission and space to do it. Whatever happens, you're safe here, in this quiet moment, exactly as you are. Tears or none, composed or not. There's no wrong way to release a weight you've been carrying for a long time. Chapter 29. The weight of unspoken resentment. Sometimes what we carry includes resentment we've never fully spoken, even to ourselves, toward a person, a situation, a version of our life that didn't turn out how we hoped, that someone else's choices shaped in ways we never agreed to. Resentment like this can be hard to admit, especially if it feels unkind, or unfair to the person it's aimed at, or simply uncomfortable to sit with directly. So it often stays quiet, unspoken, slowly adding its own weight to everything else being carried. Tonight, without needing to act on it, without needing to confront anyone or resolve anything, you're allowed to simply acknowledge, honestly, if resentment is part of what you've been holding. Naming it, even privately, doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you an honest one, finally willing to look at something you've been carrying quietly for a while. You don't have to release the resentment completely tonight. Some things take longer to work through than a single evening allows. But you can, at least, stop pretending it isn't there. That honesty, even without resolution, tends to lighten the load slightly, simply by no longer needing to be hidden even from yourself. Chapter 30. Trusting that connection is still possible. If loneliness has been part of what you've been carrying, it's worth remembering gently that this feeling, however real and heavy right now, is not necessarily permanent. Real connection, tends to arrive in ways we don't always expect, at times we don't always predict. A conversation that goes deeper than usual. A new person who turns out to understand more than you expected. An old relationship that quietly deepens once both people are ready for it to. You don't have to force this connection tonight, or even actively search for it right now. You simply have to trust that it remains possible, even during a season that feels isolating. Loneliness, as heavy as it feels, is rarely the permanent state it seems to be in the middle of a hard night. Let yourself hold a small quiet hope tonight that connection is still ahead of you, even if it hasn't arrived yet. Hope like this doesn't need proof to be worth holding on to. Chapter 31. Small joys that still exist. Even now in the middle of carrying something heavy, it's easy to lose sight of small joys that still exist. quietly, even during a hard season, a favorite song, a warm drink, a moment of laughter that caught you off guard, a small kindness from someone that landed more deeply than they probably realized. These small joys don't cancel out the weight you've been carrying, but they exist alongside it, offering brief, real relief, evidence that your life, even now, still contains good things worth noticing. Think back over the last few days. Was there a small joy somewhere, even a brief one, that you didn't fully pause to appreciate at the time? Let yourself notice it now, fully, giving it the attention it deserved in the moment, but maybe didn't receive, because you were focused on everything heavier. Small joys like this are not distractions from what's hard. They're proof that hard and good can coexist, that carrying weight doesn't mean your whole life has become only weight. Let that be a small comfort tonight. Chapter 30. What looks different in the morning night has a way of making everything feel heavier, more permanent, more overwhelming than it often turns out to be once morning arrives. This isn't your imagination. It's simply how tired minds tend to process difficulty, especially in the dark, especially alone, especially without the usual distractions of a busy day to soften the intensity. Whatever feels unbearably heavy right now, tonight, may look slightly different once you've rested, once daylight returns, once your mind has had a chance to process things with a little more clarity and a little less exhaustion. This doesn't mean the underlying struggle isn't real. It simply means tonight's intensity is not necessarily a fair or final measure of how things actually are. Nighttime distortion is real, and it's worth remembering, especially on the hardest nights. Let yourself trust that morning may soften some of what feels sharp right now. You don't have to solve everything tonight. In this heightened, tired state, you only have to get through tonight, and let morning bring whatever clarity it brings. Chapter 30. On being tired of being strong. If you're tired of being strong, tired of holding things together, tired of being the reliable one, the capable one, the one who doesn't fall apart, I want you to know that tiredness is valid. And it doesn't mean you've failed at being strong. It simply means you've been strong for a long time, without enough rest in between. Even the strongest structures need maintenance, need periods of rest, need support from something outside themselves to keep standing over time. You are not a structure that's supposed to hold indefinitely, without any relief. You're a person, and people need rest, need support, need permission to occasionally not be strong, without that meaning something has gone wrong. Tonight, you don't have to be strong. You can simply be tired, honestly, without needing to push through it or perform otherwise. Strength will still be there tomorrow, if you need it again. Tonight you're allowed to set it down completely. Chapter 34. The comfort of not being the only one whatever you're carrying tonight. However isolating it feels, you are very likely not the only person experiencing something like it. Across the world, right now, in this exact hour, other people are lying awake with their own version of a heavy, quiet weight, feeling just as alone with it as you do. This doesn't erase your specific struggle or make it identical to anyone else's. But there's a real comfort in knowing you're not uniquely broken, uniquely burdened, uniquely unable to cope the way everyone else seems to manage. Most people are carrying more than they show, more than you'd ever guess from the outside. You are part of a much larger, quieter community of people, simply trying to get through hard nights, hard seasons, hard chapters of their lives. You can't see them from where you're lying, but they're there, in their own quiet rooms, doing exactly what you're doing right now, trying to rest, trying to keep going, trying to carry what feels almost too heavy to carry. You are not as alone in this as it feels. Let that thought sit with you gently tonight. Chapter 35. What community has always meant long before modern life pulled people into smaller, more isolated units. Humans lived in close community almost by necessity, sharing food, sharing labor, sharing the raising of children, sharing both burdens and celebrations, as a matter of survival, not choice. Somewhere along the way, especially in recent generations, many of us lost access to that kind of built-in community, left instead to manage almost everything privately, individually, often without realizing how unusual that isolation actually is compared to most of human history. This isn't your fault, and it's not a personal failing that you don't currently have that kind of support around you. It's simply a difficult feature of how much of modern life has been structured. But it's worth remembering that this isolation isn't natural or inevitable. Community, in some form, is something humans have always needed, and something worth actively working to rebuild, in whatever way is possible for your specific life. Tonight, you don't have to solve this large structural absence. You just have to know that needing community isn't a flaw in you. It's simply what humans have always needed, and what you deserve too. Chapter 36. On letting yourself be helped. If someone has offered help recently and you turned it down, out of habit, out of pride, out of not wanting to be a burden, I want you to gently reconsider that instinct tonight. Letting someone help you is not a burden to them, most of the time. It's often quietly, a gift, an opportunity for them to show care in a tangible way, a chance to feel useful and connected to you, rather than helplessly watching you struggle from a distance while insisting you're fine. You don't have to accept every offer of help, but it's worth examining whether your instinct to refuse comes from genuine lack of need, or from an old belief that needing help makes you weak, or difficult, or too much. Tonight, simply notice that instinct, without needing to change it immediately. Next time help is offered, you might let yourself pause a little longer before automatically declining. That small pause alone could open a door that's been closed for a while. Chapter 37. The quiet relief of honesty. There's a specific kind of relief that comes from simply being honest, even just with yourself, about how hard things have actually been, rather than continuing to minimize it, downplay it, or compare it unfavorably to what you imagine other people are dealing with. Tonight, let yourself be fully honest, at least internally. This has been hard. This has been heavier than you've let yourself admit, even to yourself. You have been struggling, genuinely, not exaggerating, not being dramatic, simply carrying something real and difficult. That honesty doesn't need an audience to matter. It matters simply because it's true, and because pretending otherwise, even privately, has its own quiet cost over time. Let the pretending stop, just for tonight. Let the honesty be enough. Chapter 38. Permission to rest fully tonight. Before we move toward the end of this long, slow evening together, I want to offer you something simple and direct. Permission. Full permission to rest tonight, without conditions, without needing to have solved anything first, without needing to have earned it through productivity or perfect behavior. You don't need to fix the weight we've talked about tonight before you're allowed to sleep well. You don't need clarity on every unresolved question. You simply need rest, because you're a tired person, and tired people deserve rest, regardless of how unfinished everything else feels. Let this permission settle into you now fully. Whatever is still unresolved will still be there tomorrow, waiting patiently, exactly as it is. Tonight is only for rest. Chapter 39. A gentle return to hope. Even in the middle of a heavy season, hope is still available, quietly, if you're willing to let yourself hold even a small amount of it. Hope doesn't require certainty. It doesn't require proof that things will get better on any particular schedule. It simply requires a willingness to trust, even slightly, that this exact moment, however hard, is not the whole story of your life. Things have shifted before, even when they felt permanently stuck. Support has arrived before, even when it felt entirely absent. Relief has come before, even after long, difficult stretches that seemed like they might never end. Let yourself hold a small piece of that hope tonight, not as a demand that things improve quickly, but simply as a quiet trust that they can, in their own time, in ways you can't fully predict from here. Chapter 40. The space between struggling and surviving. There's a space worth noticing tonight, between simply struggling and actually surviving. You have been surviving this whole time, even during the hardest stretches, even when it didn't feel like enough. Surviving isn't glamorous. It doesn't always look like progress from the outside, but it's real, and it's significant, and it's exactly what has brought you here, tonight. Still here, still breathing, still trying to rest, despite everything you've been carrying. That survival counts. It has counted every single day, even the ones that felt like just barely getting through. Let yourself recognize that tonight, fully, without minimizing it. Chapter 41. On rebuilding trust in yourself. If carrying this weight has shaken your trust in yourself, your judgment, your resilience, your ability to handle hard things, I want to gently offer a different way of seeing it. You have in fact handled hard things this whole time, even if imperfectly, even if it didn't feel like handling them well. You got through today. You got through yesterday, and the day before that, and countless hard days before this one, even when you doubted, at the time, whether you could. That track record is real, even if your tired mind tends to forget it during difficult moments. Rebuilding trust in yourself doesn't require perfect confidence. It simply requires noticing, honestly, how much you've already survived, and letting that evidence slowly outweigh the doubt. You are more capable than the tired, doubting voice tonight is giving you credit for. You've proven that already, more times than you've likely counted. Chapter 40. Woe. The long arc of healing from something heavy rarely happens in a straight line. It moves forward, then sometimes backward, then forward again, in a pattern that can feel discouraging if you expect steady, visible progress the whole way through. This unevenness is not a sign that healing isn't happening. It's simply what healing tends to look like, up close, for almost everyone who's ever gone through something difficult. A hard day after weeks of feeling better doesn't erase the progress that came before it. It's simply part of a longer, uneven arc, moving generally forward even when individual days don't feel that way. If you've had setbacks recently, after periods that felt easier, let go of the idea that this means you're back at the beginning. You're not. You're simply further along a winding path than you were before, even if tonight happens to be one of the harder points on it. Chapter 43. What kindness from strangers teaches, sometimes the smallest, briefest kindness from someone you barely know, a stranger holding a door, a small unexpected compliment, someone simply being patient with you on a hard day, can offer a disproportionate amount of comfort, more than it probably intended to give. These small moments remind us of something important. Kindness still exists in the world, even during hard seasons, even when it feels like everything and everyone is working against you. People are, more often than not, capable of small goodness, even towards strangers, even without being asked. If you can recall a moment like this recently, even a small one, let it sit with you for a moment tonight. It's evidence, small but real, that the world still contains warmth, even during a heavy chapter of your own life. Chapter 44. On letting the day end. Hear whatever happened today, the hard parts, the unresolved parts, the moments you wish had gone differently. It's allowed to end here now, in this quiet room, without needing to be carried forward into the night in full detail. The day is over. Its lessons, if there are any to be learned, can be reflected on tomorrow, with a clearer, more rested mind. Tonight, the day simply gets to be finished, set down, released. Let today end here. You don't have to keep replaying it, analyzing it, or holding on to every detail. You've lived it. That's enough. Let it close now, gently, so tonight can simply be about rest. Chapter 45. The practice of self-compassion. Self-compassion isn't about pretending everything is fine, or lowering your standards for yourself. It's simply about treating yourself with the same kindness you would naturally offer someone else going through something difficult. If a close friend told you everything you've been carrying lately, you likely wouldn't judge them harshly. You'd probably tell them they're doing their best, that it's understandable to be struggling, that they deserve support and rest, not criticism. Tonight, try offering yourself that same compassion. Not perfect, practice compassion, just a simple, honest attempt at being kind to yourself. The way you'd be kind to someone you care about, who was carrying exactly what you're carrying right now. You deserve that kindness too. It was never meant to be reserved only for other people. Chapter 46. On releasing for resting. If part of you feels guilty for resting tonight, as though there's more you should be doing, more you should be solving, more effort you should still be putting in before you're allowed to stop, I want to gently address that guilt directly. Rest is not laziness. It's not giving up. It's not avoidance. Rest is a necessary part of continuing, especially after carrying something heavy for a long time. Without it, the weight only becomes harder to carry, not easier. You are not failing by resting tonight. You are doing exactly what a tired person, carrying real weight, actually needs to do in order to keep going tomorrow. Let the guilt loosen its grip, at least for these next couple of hours. Rest is not something you need to justify. Chapter 47. What the body remembers about safety. Sometimes, especially after a long period of carrying weight alone, the body forgets what safety actually feels like. Staying slightly braced, slightly on guard, even in moments that don't require it anymore. Tonight, in this quiet room, nothing is asking anything of you. There is no threat here, no task, no performance required. This is actually a safe moment. Even if your body hasn't fully caught up to that fact yet, let your body slowly remember what safety feels like. Let the bracing ease degree by degree. Let your breathing settle into something slower, deeper, less guarded. Safety is available to you right now, even if it takes a little time and repetition for your body to fully believe it. Chapter 48. On slowly opening up again. If you've closed yourself off from others for a while, as a way of protecting yourself while carrying this weight, it's worth remembering that opening back up doesn't have to happen all at once. It can happen slowly, carefully, at whatever pace feels manageable to you. You don't owe anyone a sudden, full reopening. You're allowed to test the waters gradually. A slightly longer conversation here, a slightly more honest answer there. Seeing how it feels each time before going further. Tonight, you don't have to open up to anyone at all, but you can hold the possibility gently, as something available to you whenever you're ready, at whatever pace actually feels safe. Chapter 49. The strength in continuing anyway, even without full clarity, even without complete relief, even while still carrying real weight. You have kept continuing. That continuation, unglamorous as it looks from the inside, is its own significant strength. Many people, faced with what you've been carrying, might have stopped trying altogether. You haven't. You're still here, still listening, still seeking rest and relief. Even in the middle of a hard season, that continuing counts for something real. It's not nothing simply because it doesn't feel triumphant. Quiet continuation, especially through hard things, is one of the most genuine forms of strength a person can show. Chapter 50. On trusting tomorrow's version of you tomorrow, you'll wake up as a slightly different version of yourself than you are right now. A little more rested, hopefully, a little more capable of facing whatever the day brings than your exhausted mind feels tonight. You don't have to solve everything with tonight's tired mind. You can trust that tomorrow's version of you, rested and refreshed even slightly, will be better equipped to handle what's ahead than you are right now, at the end of a long, heavy day. Let tonight's unfinished business wait for that more capable version of you. It's coming, quietly with the morning light. Chapter 51. What you would tell a friend if a close friend came to you carrying exactly what you've been carrying. The same weight, the same exhaustion, the same quiet loneliness. What would you tell them? You would likely tell them they're doing their best, that it's okay to struggle, that they deserve support and rest and kindness, especially from themselves, that carrying something heavy doesn't make them weak or broken, simply human, going through something genuinely hard. Tonight, try offering yourself those exact words. You deserve to hear them as much as any friend would. Let yourself receive that same compassion you'd so easily offer someone else. Chapter 50. Whoa, the weight lifting. Slowly, you may not feel it fully yet, but something has likely shifted, even slightly, over the course of tonight. A little more honesty allowed in, a little more permission to rest without guilt, a little less pretending required, at least here, in this quiet space. The wool, like the kind you've been carrying, rarely lifts all at once. It lifts slowly, gradually, through moments exactly like this one. Small acknowledgments, small permissions, small acts of honesty and self-compassion, repeated over time. Trust that tonight has been one small part of that slow lifting. Even if the weight still feels present, it's a little lighter now than it was at the start of this video. That's real progress, even if it's quiet. Chapter 50. On finding your people somewhere ahead, whether you've found them yet or not. There are people capable of truly understanding what you've been carrying, capable of offering the kind of support and connection you actually need. You may not have found them yet, and that absence is real and worth acknowledging. But it doesn't mean they don't exist, or that you're destined to carry everything alone indefinitely. Finding the right people sometimes simply takes more time than we'd like, especially for people carrying something complicated or hard to explain. Let yourself trust, even quietly, that your people are out there, somewhere, whether you've crossed paths with them yet or not. That trust alone can make the waiting feel a little less isolating. Chapter 54. A return to stillness. We're moving now toward the end of this long, slow evening together. Let your whole body settle further into stillness, heavier with every breath, softer with every passing minute. Whatever you've been carrying, tonight has offered a small space to set some of it down, even briefly. That relief, however temporary, still matters. It's real rest, real permission, real acknowledgement of something that's been hard to hold alone for too long. Let this stillness deepen now, carrying you gently towards sleep. Chapter 55. Almost there, just a little further now. Let your thoughts get quieter, further apart, like stars fading gently as the night deepens toward rest. There's nothing else you need to carry right now. Nothing else you need to solve, explain, or hold together. Just this stillness, this breath, this quiet permission to finally fully rest. Chapter 56. The weight of comparing your struggle to others. Sometimes we hesitate to acknowledge our own weight because we tell ourselves someone else has it worse, that our struggle isn't significant enough to deserve attention or rest. This kind of comparison, however well-intentioned, often does more harm than good, because pain isn't actually a competition, and someone else's harder circumstance doesn't make your own struggle any less real or worthy of care. Your weight is valid simply because you're the one carrying it. It doesn't need to be ranked against anyone else's difficulty to earn the right to be acknowledged. Two things can be true at once. Someone else may indeed be facing something harder, and your own struggle can still be genuinely heavy, genuinely deserving of rest, support, and compassion. Set down the comparisons. You don't need to justify your tiredness by proving it's worse than someone else's. It's enough that it's real, and that it's yours, and that you deserve rest regardless of how it measures against anyone else's version of hard. Let your own weight simply be acknowledged on its own terms, without needing to compete for the right to matter. Chapter 57. What happens when we finally stop pretending? There's a particular kind of exhaustion that builds specifically from pretending. Pretending you're fine, pretending things are manageable, pretending the smile is real, when underneath it something has been quietly breaking down for longer than anyone around you realizes. When we finally stop pretending, even briefly, even privately, something shifts. The energy that was being spent maintaining the performance becomes available again, redirected toward actual rest, actual processing, actual healing, instead of being consumed by the exhausting effort of appearing okay. Tutney. In this private, quiet space, the pretending can stop completely. No one is watching. No one needs convincing. You can simply be exactly as tired, as overwhelmed, as uncertain as you actually are, without needing to manage anyone else's perception of you. Notice what it feels like to finally stop pretending, even for these few minutes. That release, small as it seems, is real relief. The kind that's been unavailable to you during all the hours you've spent performing wellness for the people around you. Chapter 58. The old idea of carrying each other long before modern independence became the default expectation. Communities operated on a simple, ancient understanding that people were meant to carry each other, taking turns being the strong one and the struggling one, depending on the season of life each person happened to be in. Nobody was expected to be endlessly strong, endlessly self-sufficient, endlessly capable without support. Instead, the expectation was mutual. When you struggled, others carried you for a while, and when you were strong, you did the same for them. This wasn't charity or weakness. It was simply how life was understood to work. Somewhere along the way, especially in modern life, this mutual carrying became rarer, replaced by an expectation that everyone should manage entirely on their own, hiding struggle, projecting constant capability, rarely asking for or receiving the kind of support that used to be simply assumed. Tonight, let yourself remember this older, more honest understanding. You were never meant to carry everything by yourself. Somewhere, someone is capable of carrying part of this with you, if you eventually let them. That's not a modern weakness. It's actually the much older, much more natural way things were always meant to work. Chapter 59. On the exhaustion of always being capable. If you've built a reputation, intentionally or not, as the capable one, the one who handles things, the one who doesn't need much, I want to acknowledge something honestly tonight. That reputation, however useful it's been, can become its own quiet trap, making it harder to ask for help, even when you desperately need it, because doing so would break the pattern everyone has come to expect from you. You are allowed to not be capable sometimes. You are allowed to need help, even after years of being the one who provides it for others. Capability is not a permanent identity you owe to everyone around you at all times. It's simply something you have, sometimes, and don't have, other times, the same as everyone else. Tonight, let go of the pressure to maintain that reputation. You don't have to be capable right now. You're allowed to simply be tired, uncertain, and in need of rest, without worrying about disappointing anyone's expectations of your usual strength. Chapter 60. The comfort of being understood. Even briefly, there's a specific kind of relief that comes from feeling, even briefly, that someone understands what you're going through, without needing lengthy explanation, without needing to justify why it's hard. Tonight, even through a recorded voice rather than a live conversation, I want you to feel, at least somewhat, that understanding. Whatever you've been carrying, it makes sense that it's heavy. It makes sense that you're tired. It makes sense that you've needed a space like this, tonight, to finally set some of it down. You are understood, at least in this moment, at least by this voice speaking quietly into your dark room. That understanding, however brief, however unconventional the source, still counts. Let it offer you a small measure of the connection you've been missing. Chapter 61. What time alone doesn't have to mean being alone right now. In this room, doesn't have to mean you're fundamentally alone in life, even though it can feel that way during quiet, difficult nights. Solitude and isolation are different things, even though they can feel identical in the dark. Solitude can be peaceful, restorative, simply a natural part of an otherwise connected life. Isolation is different, a felt absence of connection that persists even when you're around other people. Tonight's aloneness doesn't have to be evidence of permanent isolation. It might simply be tonight's aloneness, temporary, ordinary, not a verdict on your whole life. Let yourself hold that distinction gently, without assuming the worst interpretation of a quiet, solitary night. Chapter 60. Whoa. The practice of gentle self-talk. Notice for a moment how you've been speaking to yourself lately, especially during hard moments. Has the inner voice been kind, patient, understanding? Or has it been critical, impatient, adding its own weight on top of whatever else you've been carrying? Many of us speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to someone else we cared about. Harsher, more critical, less forgiving of mistakes or struggles. This internal harshness often goes unnoticed, simply because it's become so habitual, so constant, that it feels like the normal background noise of thinking, rather than something actively adding to your burden. Tonight, try shifting that inner voice, even slightly, towards something gentler. Instead of criticizing yourself for struggling, try acknowledging that struggling under real weight is simply what a human does. Instead of demanding more from yourself, try offering the same patience you'd offer someone else going through something hard. This gentler inner voice won't fix everything overnight, but it can meaningfully lighten the load. One kinder thought at a time. Chapter 63. On grieving the support you didn't get. Sometimes part of what we carry is grief, not for something we lost, but for support we needed and never received. During childhood, during a difficult period, during a time when we could have used more care than was actually available to us. This kind of grief is valid too, even though it's less commonly acknowledged than grief for a clear, visible loss. Not receiving support you needed, especially during formative or vulnerable times, leaves its own marks, its own quiet ache that can resurface during difficult nights like this one. You're allowed to grieve that absence, even now, even if the moment it happened has long since passed. Acknowledging it doesn't mean staying stuck in it forever. It simply means being honest about something that shaped you, that deserves recognition, rather than continued burial. Chapter 64. What rest can rebuild? Genuine rest, the kind you're moving toward tonight, does more than simply pause your tiredness temporarily. Over time, consistent rest rebuilds capacity, emotional resilience, physical energy. the mental clarity needed to handle whatever comes next with a little more steadiness than exhaustion allows. Tonight's rest is not simply an escape from your struggles. It's an investment in your ability to face them more effectively once you've recovered enough strength to do so. This isn't avoidance, it's necessary preparation, the same way an athlete rests between efforts. Not because the effort doesn't matter, but because sustained effort without rest eventually breaks down entirely. Let tonight's rest be understood this way, not as giving up, but as actively rebuilding what carrying this weight has worn down. You're not stepping away from your life by resting. You're strengthening yourself to meet it again, tomorrow, a little more capable than you are right now. Chapter 65. The quiet dignity of continuing. There is a quiet dignity in simply continuing, even without dramatic breakthroughs, even without visible proof that things are getting better, even while still carrying real weight through ordinary days. This dignity doesn't require recognition from anyone else to be real. It exists simply in the act of getting up, showing up, trying again, day after day, even when it would be easier, in some ways, to give up entirely. You have that dignity right now, tonight, simply by virtue of still being here, still trying, still seeking rest instead of surrendering to exhaustion completely. Let yourself feel that dignity, quietly, as something earned through everything you've continued to carry, even on the hardest days. Chapter 66. On letting future you handle some of this. Not everything needs to be resolved by you, tonight, in this exhausted, heavy state. Some of what you're carrying can be handed off, gently, to a future version of yourself. One who's had more rest, more time, more clarity, more support than you currently have access to. This isn't procrastination. It's simply recognizing that some problems are better solved by a rested mind than an exhausted one, and that waiting for that rested mind to arrive is not a failure, but simply good judgment. Let yourself hand off some of tonight's weight to that future version of you. They'll be better equipped to handle it than you are right now, at the end of a long, heavy day. Chapter 67. A return to the present moment amid everything we've discussed tonight. The past weight, the future uncertainty, the ongoing struggle. I want to bring your attention back gently to this exact present moment. Right now you are safe. Right now you are resting. Right now nothing is actively demanding anything from you except your breath, your stillness, your willingness to simply be here. This present moment, simple as it is actually the only place real rest can happen. Not in the past, which is finished, and not in the future, which hasn't arrived. Only here now, in this quiet, ordinary moment, exactly as it is. Let your attention settle fully into this moment now. It's enough. It's exactly where you need to be. Chapter 68. The weight that's already lighter. Notice, if you can, whether the weight you brought into this video feels even slightly different now than it did at the start. Not necessarily gone, not necessarily fully resolved, but perhaps, in some small way, a little more acknowledged, a little more understood, a little less isolating than it felt an hour or more ago. This shift, however small, is real progress. Weight like this rarely disappears all at once. It lightens gradually, through moments exactly like tonight. Honest acknowledgement, gentle self-compassion, permission to rest without needing to have everything figured out first. Let yourself notice and appreciate that shift, even if it's subtle. You've done real work tonight, simply by staying present through all of this, simply by allowing yourself to feel and acknowledge what's been true underneath the surface for a while now. Chapter 69. Trusting the people still to come. Even if the people currently in your life haven't fully understood what you've been carrying, it's worth remembering that your circle of connection isn't fixed forever. New people enter our lives, sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes exactly when we need them most, capable of offering understanding that wasn't available before. You don't know yet who might enter your life, capable of truly carrying part of this weight alongside you. But the possibility remains open, genuinely, even during a season that currently feels isolating. Let yourself trust that possibility tonight, holding it gently as something still ahead of you, rather than something permanently unavailable. Chapter 70. The slow work of becoming lighter. Becoming lighter, after carrying something heavy for a long time, is slow work, rarely accomplished through one conversation, one video, one moment of clarity. It happens through repetition, returning again and again to honesty, to rest, to self-compassion, until gradually the weight becomes more manageable than it once was. Tonight is one part of that slow work. Not the whole solution, but a genuine, meaningful part of it. Trust that returning here, or to whatever helps you process this weight, again and again, will continue to lighten things gradually, even if progress isn't always visible night to night. Chapter 71. What you've given yourself tonight. Take a moment to notice what you've actually given yourself over the course of this long evening. Permission to rest, permission to be honest, permission to set down a performance you've been maintaining for longer than was healthy. That's not nothing. That's real care, offered by you, to you, at a time when you likely needed it most. Let yourself acknowledge that gift, quietly, as something meaningful, regardless of how ordinary or small it might seem, compared to more dramatic forms of self-care. Chapter 72. The last stretch, before sleep. We're moving now into the final stretch of tonight's journey together. Let your whole body settle further, heavier with every breath, softer with every passing word. Whatever remains unresolved can wait until tomorrow. Whatever still feels heavy can rest here, in this quiet room, while you finally let sleep take over completely. Chapter 73. One last reminder before we close completely. One last reminder, in case you need to hear it again. You are not as alone in this as it has felt. You are not weak for struggling. You are not failing by needing rest, needing support, needing more than you've been allowing yourself to have lately. You are simply human, carrying something real, doing your best, deserving care exactly as you are. Chapter 74. Carrying less into tomorrow, whatever tomorrow brings. I hope you carry a little less into it than you carried into today. A little more permission to rest, a little more willingness to let others in, a little more compassion for yourself along the way. That shift, small as it seems, can make a real difference over time, gradually lightening a weight that's felt, for too long, like something you had to carry entirely alone. Chapter 75. Final stillness. Let everything settle now, fully. Your breathing slow and even. Your body heavy and soft against the bed. Your mind finally quiet, finally at rest. There's nothing left to carry tonight. Just this stillness, this breath, this quiet permission to finally, completely let go. Chapter 76. On the shame that isn't yours. Sometimes the heaviest part of what we carry isn't the original struggle itself, but the shame layered on top of it. Shame for struggling at all. Shame for needing help. Shame for not handling things as gracefully as we imagine others would in our place. This shame rarely belongs to you in any fair sense. It's usually inherited, absorbed from a culture that prizes constant capability over honest humanity, that treats struggle as something to hide rather than something to be supported through. Tonight, try setting that shame down, separately from the actual struggle underneath it. The struggle may still need attention, but the shame, the harsh judgment of yourself for having a struggle at all, was never a fair or necessary addition. Let it go, even if just for tonight. Chapter 77. What forgiveness of self actually requires. Forgiving yourself for struggling, for needing help, for not managing everything perfectly. Doesn't require you to first prove you deserve it through some future accomplishment. It simply requires a decision made quietly to stop punishing yourself for being human. You don't need more evidence tonight that you've tried hard enough, done enough, suffered enough to earn this forgiveness. You can simply offer it to yourself now, as an act of basic kindness, the same kindness you'd offer someone else, without demanding they prove their worthiness first. Let that forgiveness settle in gently tonight, uncomplicated, unconditional, exactly the way it should have always been available to you. Chapter 78. Small Rituals of Care. Sometimes the way back toward feeling less burdened isn't one large solution, but a collection of small, repeated rituals of care. A few minutes of quiet each evening, a short walk, a warm drink, a moment of honesty with yourself, exactly like this one. These small rituals don't solve everything at once, but they accumulate, slowly building a foundation of self-care that makes the larger weight more manageable over time. Tonight, this video itself can become one of those small rituals, something you return to whenever the weight feels too heavy to carry silently. Let it be a small, steady practice rather than a single, one-time fix. Chapter 79. On trusting that things can still change whatever feels stuck right now, permanently heavy, permanently unresolved. It's worth remembering that circumstances change, often in ways we can't predict. From the middle of a hard season, relationships shift, situations resolve, new opportunities appear, sometimes quietly, sometimes suddenly, reshaping what felt impossible to change just months earlier. You don't need proof tonight that your specific situation will change. You simply need to hold the door open to that possibility, rather than assuming, with certainty, that tonight's heaviness is how things will always be. Chapter 80. The Quiet Power of Being. Witnessed even through a recorded voice, speaking into your dark, quiet room, something real can happen, simply through being witnessed. Your struggle acknowledged, your tiredness understood, your weight taken seriously rather than dismissed. This witnessing, imperfect and one-directional as it is, still offers something valuable. It interrupts, even briefly, the isolation of carrying something entirely unseen and unacknowledged by anyone else. Let yourself receive this witnessing tonight, imperfect as it is. You've been seen, at least in this small way. That matters more than it might initially seem. Chapter 81. What happens after rest? Rest tonight isn't the end of the process. It's simply one necessary part of a longer process that continues beyond this single evening. Through tomorrow, through the coming weeks, through whatever gradual steps eventually lead toward feeling less burdened than you do right now. You don't have to complete that whole process tonight. You simply have to take this one step, resting fully, so that tomorrow you have slightly more capacity to take the next one, whatever that turns out to be. Chapter 80. Woe. On being patient with your own process. Whatever pace your healing, your processing, your gradual lightening takes, it's worth extending patience toward that pace, rather than demanding it move faster than it naturally can. Some things simply take the time they take. Rushing rarely helps, and often adds additional pressure on top of an already heavy situation. Let your process unfold at whatever speed it actually needs, without judging yourself for it not moving faster. Chapter 83. A different kind of productivity. Tonight's rest might not look productive by usual standards, but it is, in a deeper sense, some of the most important work you can do right now. Emotional recovery, physical rest, quiet processing of a heavy season. These are productive, even though they don't produce a visible, external result. Let yourself value this quieter kind of productivity tonight. Understanding that rest itself is doing real, necessary work, even without anything to show for it, by morning except a slightly lighter, more rested version of you. Chapter 84. The comfort of consistency, returning to this same kind of stillness, night after night if needed, builds its own kind of comfort over time, a familiar space where honesty and rest are always available, regardless of how the day went. This consistency matters, especially during a heavy season, offering something steady to return to, even when everything else feels uncertain. Let tonight be part of that ongoing consistency. One more return to a place where you're allowed to simply be tired, without needing to perform otherwise. Chapter 85. What small steps forward look like progress during a heavy season rarely looks dramatic. It looks like small steps, one honest conversation, one evening of genuine rest, one moment of self-compassion instead of self-criticism, repeated slowly over time. You don't need a dramatic breakthrough tonight. You simply need to keep taking these small steps, trusting that they add up, gradually, into something that eventually feels significantly lighter than where you started. Chapter 86. On letting this be enough tonight doesn't need to solve everything. It doesn't need to fully resolve the weight you've been carrying, or answer every unresolved question sitting underneath it. It simply needs to offer some rest, some acknowledgement, some small reliefs, and that's exactly what it's done. Let this be enough for tonight. You don't owe yourself, or anyone else, more resolution than this single evening can realistically provide. Rest is enough. Acknowledgement is enough. This is enough. Chapter 87. The path back to feeling like yourself. Somewhere underneath all this weight, a version of you exists who feels lighter, more like yourself, less burdened by everything you've been carrying. That version of you isn't gone. They're simply temporarily buried under a difficult season, waiting patiently to re-emerge as things gradually ease. You will feel more like yourself again, even if it's hard to imagine that fully right now. Trust that process, even without a clear timeline for when it will fully happen. Chapter 88. On letting others carry what they can. You don't have to carry everything alone. And you also don't have to wait for someone capable of carrying all of it before accepting any help at all. Different people in your life may be capable of carrying different small pieces, even if none of them can hold the whole weight by themselves. Let yourself accept partial support wherever it's genuinely available, rather than holding out for one person capable of understanding and carrying everything completely. Partial support, gathered from multiple sources, still meaningfully lightens the load. Chapter 89. What you would want someone else to know. If someone you cared about was carrying exactly what you've been carrying, what would you want them to know? Probably that they're not alone, that their struggle is valid, that rest and support are available to them, even if it doesn't always feel that way. Let yourself receive those same messages tonight, directed inward instead of outward. You deserve to hear them as much as anyone else would. Chapter 90. The weight of unmet expectations. Sometimes part of what we carry includes grief over expectations that didn't get met. By ourselves, by others, by circumstances that simply didn't unfold the way we hoped they would. This grief is valid, even when it feels difficult to name clearly. Unmet expectations, especially ones held for a long time, create real disappointment, worth acknowledging, rather than dismissing as something you should simply be over by now. Chapter 91. On redefining what support looks like. Support doesn't always look like what we initially expect. Sometimes it's not a dramatic rescue, but small, consistent presence. Sometimes it's not perfect understanding, but simply someone willing to sit with you through something hard, even without fully grasping it. Tonight, consider whether you've been waiting for a specific, ideal form of support that may not actually be necessary. Smaller, more available forms of support might be closer than you think, if you're willing to recognize and accept them as valid. Chapter 90. Woe. The reminder you might need. If there's one thing worth carrying forward from tonight, let it be this. You are not required to carry everything alone, and needing help does not diminish your worth or capability in any way. This reminder is simple, but easy to forget during exhausting, isolating seasons. Let it settle in deeply tonight, becoming something you can return to whenever the old belief about needing to handle everything alone starts creeping back in. Chapter 93. Trusting the slow return of lightness. After carrying something heavy for a long time, tends to return slowly, in small increments, rather than all at once. A slightly easier morning here, a slightly more hopeful thought there. Gradually, over weeks and months, the weight becomes more bearable, even if it never disappears completely. Trust that this slow return is already beginning. Even if tonight's weight still feels significant, small shifts are happening, even when they're hard to notice in the moment. Chapter 94. What remains true? Regardless of how heavy tonight feels, some things remain true and steady underneath it all. You are still capable, still worthy of care, still moving forward, even during a difficult stretch. These truths don't depend on how you feel in any given moment. They remain constant, waiting to be remembered again, once the heaviness eases. Chapter 95. The long walk toward feeling better after carrying something heavy is often a long walk rather than a quick arrival. There's no need to rush it, or to judge yourself for not being further along than you currently are. Long walks take time, and every step, however small, still moves you forward. Chapter 96. Closing the distance. Slowly, the distance between how heavy things feel now and how they'll eventually feel closes slowly, step by step, night by night, through exactly this kind of quiet, honest processing. Tonight has closed a small part of that distance. Trust that continuing this practice will keep closing it further, over time. Chapter 97. A return to breath. One final time, let's return. One final time tonight to the simplest anchor available, your breath, slow, steady, present, requiring nothing from you except to notice it. Breathe in, slowly, and out, even slower. Let this simple rhythm carry you the rest of the way towards sleep, without needing anything more complicated than this. Chapter 98. The weight you're leaving here. As we near the true end of tonight's journey, picture leaving some of tonight's weight here, in this room, in this quiet stillness, rather than carrying all of it forward into sleep with you. You can leave it here, safely, and pick back up only what's still useful tomorrow, once you've rested enough to sort through it with a clearer mind. Chapter 99. Nearly at rest, your body is heavy now. Your breathing has slowed. Your mind, quieter than it was at the start of tonight, is finally approaching the stillness it's needed for a while. Let this final stretch carry you gently the rest of the way towards sleep. Chapter 100. The last words tonight. You are not alone in this, even when it feels that way. You are not weak for struggling, not broken for needing rest, not failing simply because things have been hard. You are human, carrying something real, and tonight, you've allowed yourself to set some of it down. That matters. Chapter 101. On releasing the need to be perfect. Somewhere underneath the weight you've been carrying, there's often a quiet belief that you need to handle everything perfectly. The struggle itself, the way you cope with it, even the process of asking for help if you ever get there. But there's no perfect way to carry something heavy. There's no perfect way to struggle, no perfect way to heal, no perfect way to ask for support. There's only your own honest, imperfect attempt. made the best way you know how, given everything you're dealing with. Let go of needing to do any of this perfectly tonight. Imperfect effort is still effort. Imperfect rest is still rest. You don't need to master this to deserve relief from it. Chapter 102. The courage it takes to asking for help, even quietly, even just once, takes real courage, more courage often, than continuing to manage everything silently. Because it requires risking vulnerability, risking being turned away, risking someone not fully understanding. If you've been avoiding asking because of that risk, I want you to know the fear is understandable, but it doesn't mean asking isn't still worth eventually trying. Many people, more than you might expect, respond to honest vulnerability with genuine care, not rejection. You don't have to ask tonight. But when you're ready, know that the courage required is real, and that having it, even imperfectly, even nervously, is still something to be proud of. Chapter 103. What true friendship actually offers. True friendship isn't measured by how much fun you have together, but by whether someone is willing to sit with you through hard, unglamorous moments, without needing you to be entertaining, capable, or put together. If you have even one person like that in your life, even someone you haven't leaned on in a while, that friendship is worth remembering tonight, as evidence that real support does exist. Even if it currently feels distant or underused, if you don't yet have someone like that, it's worth holding as a hope for the future. Something to look for and nurture, rather than something you're required to already have figured out. Chapter 104. Seasons of leaning and being leaned. On every relationship, over time, moves through seasons. Sometimes you're the one leaning, needing support, and sometimes you're the one others lean on, offering support in return. Neither season is permanent, and neither one makes you more or less valuable than the other. If you've been in a leaning season for a while, needing more support than you've been able to give lately, that's simply where you are right now, not a permanent character flaw. Seasons shift. You'll likely be the steady one again, for someone else, when the time comes. Chapter 105. Gratitude for having made it this far. Whatever this season has required of you, you've made it this far. Through hard days, difficult nights, moments that felt like too much to carry. That alone deserves a quiet moment of gratitude, not for the difficulty itself, but for your own persistence through it. Take a moment now to acknowledge that persistence. You've survived every hard day so far, 100% of them, even the ones that felt impossible at the time. That track record is real, and it counts for something significant. Chapter 106. The story you'll eventually tell someday. This season will become a story you tell. Maybe to someone going through something similar, maybe just to yourself, looking back with more distance and perspective than you have right now. That story likely won't sound like failure. It will sound like a hard chapter you got through, one day at a time, even when you doubted yourself, even when it felt unbearable in the moment. Trust that this chapter too will eventually become part of a story you're able to tell with a measure of pride, rather than only pain. Chapter 107. Letting the night do its healing work. There's something the night does quietly, beneath our awareness, while we sleep, processing, repairing, sorting through the day's difficulties in ways our conscious mind can't fully access or control. Trust that tonight's sleep is doing this necessary work, even without your direct efforts. You don't have to consciously solve everything before sleep arrives. Simply resting allows this quiet, natural processing to happen on its own. Chapter 108. Small proof of your resilience. Resilience isn't a personality trait some people have and others don't. It's built, gradually, through exactly the kind of hard experiences you've been living through lately, whether you've noticed it building or not. Every hard day you've gotten through is small proof of resilience already present within you. Let yourself recognize that proof tonight, rather than assuming resilience is something you're still waiting to develop. Chapter 109. Welcoming rest as an achievement. In a world that often only celebrates visible, external achievements, it's worth reframing tonight's rest as its own kind of achievement, a deliberate choice to care for yourself, rather than continuing to push through exhaustion without pause. Let yourself feel a small sense of accomplishment for choosing rest tonight, rather than treating it as something lesser than productivity. This rest is meaningful, valuable work, even though it doesn't look like the usual kind. Chapter 110. The simplicity of being enough tonight, stripped of everything else, the weight, the worry, the uncertainty about tomorrow. You are simply enough tonight. Not because of anything you've accomplished, but because being a tired, struggling, honest human is already enough to deserve rest, care, and compassion. Let that simple truth settle in fully now, uncomplicated by anything else we've discussed tonight. Chapter 111. A quiet blessing for tomorrow. Before we close completely, I want to offer a small quiet blessing for whatever tomorrow brings you. May it be a little easier than today. May you find a little more support than you expect. May the weight you've been carrying continue, slowly, to lighten. Chapter 112. The final return to stillness. Let everything settle now, completely. Your body heavy and soft. Your breathing slow and even. Your mind finally quiet, finally ready for the rest it's needed for so long. Chapter 113. Almost asleep, just a little further now. Let your thoughts fade gently, like the last light of evening giving way to full darkness, soft and unhurried, exactly as it should. Chapter 114. The very last moment here, at the very last moment before sleep fully takes you, let go of everything else, the weight, the worry, even these words. None of it needs to be held onto any tighter than this. Chapter 114. The very last moment here, at the very last moment before sleep fully takes you, let go of everything else, the weight, the worry, even these words. None of it needs to be held onto any tighter than this. Chapter 115. On the weight of holding it together for others. If part of what you carry includes holding things together for other people, children, a partner, aging parents, a team at work, that responsibility adds its own particular weight, because it means your own struggles often get pushed aside, unattended, while you tend to everyone else's needs first. This isn't wrong of you. Caring for others is meaningful, important work. But it's also worth acknowledging honestly that constantly prioritizing others' needs above your own eventually creates a deficit, a kind of quiet depletion that builds slowly over time until it becomes hard to ignore. Tonight, you don't have to hold anything together for anyone else. Whoever depends on you will still be there tomorrow, and you'll likely be better equipped to care for them after finally taking a night to care for yourself first. Chapter 116. What happens when the holding pattern breaks sometimes? After holding everything together for so long, there's a fear that if you finally stop, even briefly, everything will fall apart completely. This fear keeps many people pushing forward long after they should have paused to rest. But pausing to rest rarely causes the collapse we fear. More often, a brief pause allows things to settle naturally, sometimes even revealing that certain responsibilities weren't as fragile or entirely dependent on you as it felt in the exhausted moment. Tonight, let yourself test that fear gently. Pause, rest fully. Trust that whatever needs to hold together will likely still be there tomorrow, waiting, not having collapsed, simply because you finally allowed yourself a night of genuine rest. Chapter 117. the company of every tired person. Before you, across all of human history, countless people have lain awake exactly like this, carrying weight that felt too heavy, too isolating, too difficult to explain to anyone around them. You are joining a very long, very human tradition, simply by being here tonight, tired, struggling, seeking rest. This doesn't erase your specific pains, but it does offer a kind of quiet companionship, knowing that what you're experiencing, however unique in its details, connects you to a vast, ongoing human experience shared across every generation that came before yours. You are not alone in the history of tired, struggling, resilient people who made it through nights exactly like this one. Chapter 118. On letting achievement rest too. If achievement, productivity, and constant forward motion have been part of how you've coped with this weight, using busyness to avoid fully feeling how heavy things have become, tonight offers a different option. Letting achievement rest too, alongside everything else. You don't need to accomplish anything else today. You don't need to prove your worth through productivity before allowing yourself to stop. Tonight, simply existing, simply resting, is enough, without needing an achievement attached to justify it. Chapter 119. The relief of no longer explaining. Part of what makes carrying weight alone so tiring is the constant internal narration, explaining to yourself, over and over, why you're struggling, whether it's justified, whether you're allowed to feel this way. Tonight, let that explaining stop. You don't need to justify your tiredness to anyone, including yourself. It simply is what it is, real and valid, without needing further explanation or defense. Chapter 120. What a witness doesn't need to fix. Sometimes what we need most isn't someone to fix our situation, but simply someone or something willing to witness it honestly, without immediately jumping to solutions or advice. Tonight, this space has tried to offer exactly that kind of witnessing. Not fixing, not solving, just acknowledging, honestly, that what you're carrying is real and heavy and worth taking seriously. Sometimes that witnessing alone provides more relief than any specific solution could. Chapter 121. The quiet between waking and sleeping. Right now, you're likely somewhere in that quiet space between fully awake and fully asleep, where thoughts become softer, less structured, more willing to drift rather than demand immediate attention. This is a good place to be right now. Let yourself stay here, in this soft, unstructured quiet, without needing to organize your thoughts into anything more coherent. Drifting is exactly what this moment is for. Chapter 120. Woe on trusting this isn't forever. Whatever season you're in right now, however heavy and prolonged it feels, it's worth remembering, gently, that seasons do eventually change, even the difficult ones that feel like they might last indefinitely. You don't need proof of when this will shift. You simply need to trust, quietly, that it will. The way every difficult season before this one eventually gave way to something different. Something easier, even if it took longer than you initially hoped. Chapter 120. What tomorrow's rested version of you can do tomorrow. Having rested tonight, you'll have slightly more capacity than you have right now to face whatever comes. A difficult conversation, an unresolved worry, a small step toward finding support you've been avoiding. You don't need that capacity tonight. You simply need to rest, allowing tomorrow's version of you to inherit a little more strength than tonight's exhausted version currently has access to. Chapter 124. The simplest wish for less weight. If I could offer you one simple wish tonight, it would be this: that the weight you've been carrying becomes, gradually, lighter, not because it stops mattering, but because you find more support, more rest, more honest acknowledgement of how heavy it's actually been. Let that wish settle in gently as something worth hoping for, even without a clear timeline for when it arrives. Chapter 125. Final words of comfort. You have done enough today. You have carried enough today. Whatever remains unresolved can wait patiently until you've had proper rest to face it with more clarity and strength. Let this comfort settle in fully now, as the last thought before sleep takes over completely. Chapter 126. The slow fade towards sleep. Let your thoughts continue softening now, each one a little quieter, a little further apart than the last, drifting gently the way clouds drift across a night sky, unhurried, without needing a destination. Chapter 127. Nearly there now. Your body is heavy, your breathing is slow, your mind, finally is close to the rest it's needed for so long. Just a little further now, and sleep will take over completely. Chapter 128. The last thread of awareness. If you're still awake, even faintly, know that this is the last stretch. Nothing more needs to be thought about, solved, or carried forward. Just this last thread of soft awareness, drifting gently towards sleep. Chapter 128. The last thread of awareness. If you're still awake even faintly, know that this is the last stretch. Nothing more needs to be thought about, solved, or carried forwards. Just this last thread of soft awareness, drifting gently towards sleep. Chapter 129. What this season is teaching you. Even difficult seasons, the ones that feel purely like weight to carry, often teach something quietly, in ways that only become clear much later. Patience, compassion for others going through something similar, a deeper understanding of your own resilience. You don't need to identify the lesson tonight. It will likely reveal itself later, once you have enough distance to look back and notice what this hard chapter, painful as it's been, actually gave you underneath the difficulty. Chapter 130. On the people who would show up if you let them somewhere in your life. Even if it doesn't feel obvious right now, there are likely people who would show up for you, meaningfully, if they knew how much you were carrying. Sometimes we underestimate this, assuming isolation more completely than it actually exists, simply because we've hidden our struggles so well. Let yourself consider gently who those people might be. You don't have to reach out tonight. Just let the possibility exist, quietly, as something more available than it currently feels. Chapter 131. The weight of carrying it well. There's an added pressure sometimes, not just to carry difficulty, but to carry it well, gracefully, without complaint, without letting anyone see the strain. This pressure to carry weight elegantly is its own additional burden, on top of the original struggle. Tonight, you don't have to carry anything gracefully. You can carry it messily, imperfectly, with visible strain, without needing to perform composure. Even here, even alone, there's no audience grading your performance tonight. Chapter 132. A reminder about time. Time has a way of softening even the heaviest weights, not by erasing them, but by helping us build capacity around them, developing new strength, new perspective, new ways of carrying what once felt impossibly heavy. Whatever feels unbearable tonight will likely feel different, even if not fully resolved, as more time passes. This isn't a promise that everything will feel easy soon. It's simply a reminder that time tends to help, gradually, in ways that are hard to see clearly from the middle of a hard season. Chapter 130. What you owe yourself. Tonight, you don't owe anyone else anything tonight. Not productivity, not cheerfulness, not strength, but you do owe yourself something. Care, rest, and the honest acknowledgement that you've been carrying more than most people around you realize. Let yourself pay that debt to yourself tonight, fully, without guilt, without needing permission from anyone else. Chapter 134. On the quiet between struggles. Even during a genuinely hard season, there are quiet spaces between the harder moments. Ordinary stretches of time that aren't actively painful, simply neutral, simply passing. These quiet spaces matter too, offering small pockets of relief scattered throughout even the most difficult chapters. Tonight is one of those quiet spaces. Let yourself rest fully within it, without needing to brace for the next hard moment before it actually arrives. Chapter 135. The practice of coming back to yourself throughout tonight. We've returned again and again to a simple practice. Coming back to yourself, your breath, your body, your honest experience, away from the performance and pretending that often accompanies carrying weight in front of others. This practice of returning to yourself is one you can use beyond tonight too. Anytime the weight feels like it's pulling you away from your own honest experience, simply pause, breathe, and return. Chapter 136. What deserves to be celebrated tonight? Even amid difficulty, there's something worth celebrating tonight. You showed up for yourself. You chose rest over continued avoidance. You allowed honesty instead of more performance. That choice, quiet as it is, deserves recognition. Let yourself feel a small, genuine sense of accomplishment for that choice, rather than only focusing on everything still unresolved. Chapter 137. The final layer of release. As we approach the very end now, let one final layer of tension release. Whatever small bit of holding on remains, whatever last piece of the day's weight is still lingering, let it go now, completely. There's nothing left to hold on to. Just this stillness, this breath, this complete permission to finally, fully rest. Chapter 138. Drifting. Now let your thoughts drift freely now, without direction, without needing to make sense, simply floating gently towards sleep, the way they're meant to, at the end of a long, honest evening, like this one. Chapter 139. The weight. Finally, set down picture, one last time, setting down everything we've discussed tonight, gently, completely, without needing to pick any of it back up until you're rested and ready. It's down now. You can rest. Chapter 140. Sleep is close now. Your body is fully at rest. Your breathing is slow and steady. Sleep is close now, waiting patiently to take over completely. Chapter 140. Sleep is close now. Your body is fully at rest. Your breathing is slow and steady. Sleep is close now, waiting patiently to take over completely. Chapter 141. What carrying weight has taught you about yourself, even in the middle of a hard season. It's worth noticing, quietly. What carrying this weight has revealed about your own character. A depth of endurance you may not have known you had. A capacity to keep going that has been tested repeatedly, and has so far held. This isn't meant to romanticize suffering. It's simply an honest observation. You have learned things about your own strength through this season that you likely wouldn't have learned any other way. That knowledge, hard-won as it is, remains yours to keep, even after this particular difficulty eventually eases. Chapter 140. Woe. The difference one kind word makes sometimes. During a heavy season, a single kind word from another person, or even from ourselves, can shift something significantly, offering a brief but real sense of being cared for, even amid ongoing difficulties. Tonight, this entire video has tried to be that kind word, extended toward you, quietly, without expecting anything in return. Let yourself receive it fully, allowing it to do the small but meaningful work that kind words are capable of doing. Chapter 143. On trusting your own timeline for healing. Whatever timeline your healing or processing actually takes, it's worth trusting that timeline, even if it doesn't match what you expected, or what others around you seem to experience with their own struggles. Your process is yours, shaped by your specific circumstances, your specific history, your specific capacity at any given time. There's no need to rush it to match anyone else's pace. Let it unfold exactly as slowly or as quickly as it actually needs to. Chapter 144. A final thought on being human. Being human means carrying weight sometimes, more than we'd like, more than feels manageable some nights. It also means being capable of rest, of connection, of gradually finding relief, even after difficult stretches that once felt endless. You are fully, completely human tonight, struggling, resting, hoping all at once. That's not a contradiction. That's simply what being human, honestly, actually looks like. Chapter 145. The quiet ending. We've reached the quiet ending of tonight's long journey together. Let everything settle now, completely, fully, without anything left to hold on to. You've done enough tonight, simply by staying present through all of this. Let sleep take over now, gently, completely. Chapter 145. The quiet ending. We've reached the quiet ending of tonight's long journey together. Let everything settle now, completely, fully, without anything left to hold on to. You've done enough tonight, simply by staying present through all of this. Let sleep take over now, gently, completely. Chapter 146. What remains after the weight lifts. When weight like this eventually lifts, even partially, what tends to remain is a quieter, steadier version of yourself. Someone who understands their own resilience a little more clearly, who trusts their capacity to get through hard things a little more fully than before this season began. You are already quietly becoming that steadier version of yourself, even in the middle of still carrying real difficulty. Let that gradual becoming continue, undisturbed, through tonight's rest. Chapter 147. The ordinary miracle of another day. Survived today. Like every day in this difficult season, you survived. That might sound like a small thing, but it isn't. Surviving a hard day, especially many hard days in a row, is a genuine, ongoing accomplishment, even without any visible recognition for it. Let yourself acknowledge that accomplishment tonight, quietly, as real and significant, rather than simply expected or unremarkable. Chapter 148. A final gentle truth. Here is a final gentle truth to carry into sleep tonight. You are doing better than you think, carrying more than anyone realizes, and still, somehow continuing. That continuation is not small. It is, quietly, everything. Chapter 148. A final gentle truth. Here is a final gentle truth to carry into sleep tonight. You are doing better than you think, carrying more than anyone realizes, and still, somehow, continuing. That continuation is not small. It is, quietly, everything. Chapter 149. The Lighthouse Keeper. I want to leave you with a small story tonight, one that might stay with you longer than any single idea we've discussed. Imagine an old lighthouse keeper, living alone on a rocky point where the land meets the sea. Every night, without fail, he climbs the narrow stairs to light the lamp, keeping it burning steadily through storms, through fog, through the long, dark hours when ships out on the water depend on that single point of light to find their way safely home. For years, he tends that light faithfully. Sailors he'll never meet pass safely by his shore, because of the steady glow he maintains, night after night, without complaint, without asking for recognition, simply because it needs to be done and he is the one there to do it. But here is the part of the story that matters most tonight. The keeper, so devoted to keeping the light burning for others, slowly forgets that he too needs warmth. He tends the great lamp faithfully, yet lets his own small fire, the one meant to warm his own quarters, burn low, then flicker, then nearly go out entirely, because his attention has always been turned outward, toward the ships, toward the storms, toward everyone except himself. One night, an old friend, a sailor he saved years earlier without ever learning his name, happens to dock nearby, and climbs the hill to thank him properly. Finding the keeper sitting in a cold, dim room, wrapped in a thin blanket, exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with the weather, the sailor is startled. He asks gently, why the keeper has let his own fire go so low, while keeping the great lamp burning so faithfully for strangers. The keeper doesn't have a good answer. He simply says it never occurred to him that his own warmth mattered as much as the light he provided for others. The sailor, without needing to be asked twice, gathers wood, builds up the small fire, and sits with him through the night, insisting that a keeper who lets his own light go out helps no one, not even the ships he's so devoted to guiding safely home. If you have been a keeper of light for others, for your family, your friends, your responsibilities, while letting your own fire burn dangerously low, I want you to hear the sailor's words tonight, spoken quietly, directly to you. Your own warmth matters. Your own light deserves tending too. You cannot keep guiding others safely through their storms if your own fire has gone out from neglect. Let tonight be the night someone, even just this voice, gathers wood for your fire. Let it be tended gently until it burns steady again. Chapter 150. The Traveler and the Stones. There's another old story worth telling tonight, about a traveler making a long journey across difficult terrain, carrying a heavy pack filled with stones. At the start of the journey, each stone had meant something. A worry picked up and carried. A disappointment tucked away rather than released. A fear collected along the road and added quietly to the growing weight on the traveler's back. None of the stones alone seemed like much, but together, carried for miles without ever being set down, they became an exhausting burden, one that slowed the traveler's steps and stole the joy from what should have been a beautiful journey. One evening, resting by a fire, an old woman traveling the same road noticed the traveler wince while lowering the heavy pack to the ground. She asked what was inside it. The traveler explained, one by one, what each stone represented. This one from a hard year, this one from a broken trust, this one from a fear that never quite left. The old woman listened patiently, then said something the traveler never forgot. She said the stones themselves weren't the problem. Life gives everyone stones to carry, difficulties too heavy to simply ignore. The real problem was carrying every single one indefinitely, without ever setting any of them down, without ever letting the road, and time, and rest, lighten the load along the way. She suggested something simple. Each evening, before continuing the journey, the traveler should choose just one stone, examine it honestly, and decide whether it still needed to be carried, or whether it could finally be left beside the road, its purpose served, its lesson learned, its weight no longer necessary. That night, the traveler set down the first stone, the oldest one, the one carried the longest without ever really looking at it closely. It didn't disappear completely from memory, but it no longer had to be carried forward, mile after mile, adding its weight to everything else. Tonight, I want to offer you the same invitation the old woman offered that tired traveler. You don't have to set down every stone at once, but perhaps, just for tonight, you can choose one worry, one old hurt, one fear you've been carrying longer than it needed, and simply set it down here, beside this quiet road, before continuing tomorrow with a slightly lighter pack. Chapter 151. The village that remembered how to wait. In an old story passed down through many generations, there was once a small village nestled in a valley, where an unusual tradition had developed over many years. Whenever someone in the village faced a heavy burden, grief, illness, hardships, or simply an exhausting stretch of difficult days, the other villagers would gather quietly at their door, not to fix the problem necessarily, but simply to sit with them, to help with small tasks, to remind them, through simple presence, that they were not carrying it alone. This tradition wasn't seen as charity, or pity or anything to feel ashamed of. It was simply understood by everyone that weight shared among many hands becomes lighter for the one who was struggling, and that everyone eventually would need this same support at some point in their own life. A young man in the village, having always been the one who showed up to help others, found himself, for the first time, facing something heavy of his own. A private struggle he had told no one about, hiding it behind his usual busy helpfulness, unable to imagine himself as someone who might need the very support he had always offered so freely to others. An elder in the village, noticing his exhaustion, finally sat him down one evening and asked directly what he was carrying. Startled, and then slowly, hesitantly, he began to explain. The elder simply listened without judgment, and then said something simple. The tradition of shared weight exists exactly for moments like this one. It was never meant only for others. It was always meant for him too. That night, for the first time in longer than he could remember, the young man let others help him carry something heavy, instead of only ever being the one who helped. If you have spent a long time being the helper, the strong one, the one who shows up for everyone else, I want you to hear this old story as an invitation. The tradition of shared weight was always meant for you too. You are allowed to be the one who receives help, not only the one who gives it. Chapter 150. Whoa. What all three stories are really saying: the lighthouse keeper who forgot his own fire, the traveler who learned to set down stones along the road, the young man in the village who finally let others carry part of his weight. Each of these stories, in their own way, is saying the same simple thing tonight. You are allowed to tend to yourself, not only others. You are allowed to set down what no longer needs to be carried. You are allowed to receive help, not only offer it. None of this makes you weak, selfish, or any less capable than you've always been. It simply makes you human, finally treating yourself with the same care you've so easily extended to everyone else. Let these stories settle into you now, quietly, as gentle permission to finally rest, fully, without needing to justify it any further. Chapter 150. Whoa. What all three stories are really saying: the lighthouse keeper who forgot his own fire, the traveler who learned to set down stones along the road, the young man in the village who finally let others carry part of his weight. Each of these stories, in their own way, is saying the same simple thing tonight. You are allowed to tend to yourself, not only others. You are allowed to set down what no longer needs to be carried. You are allowed to receive help, not only offer it. None of this makes you weak, selfish, or any less capable than you've always been. It simply makes you human, finally treating yourself with the same care you've so easily extended to everyone else. Let these stories settle into you now, quietly, as gentle permission to finally rest, fully, without needing to justify it any further. Chapter 153. The fire that's being tended right now. Think for a moment about your own small fire, the one that keeps you warm, steady, capable of showing up for the people and responsibilities in your life. For a while now, that fire has likely been burning low, neglected, while your attention stayed fixed outwards, on everyone and everything except yourself. Tonight, that changes, even if only for these final few minutes. This video, this quiet room, this permission to finally rest. This is the wood being gathered for your fire, the tending you've been missing for longer than you probably realized. Let it catch, let it warm you slowly, the way a fire always does, patiently, without rushing. You don't have to keep it burning brightly every single night from here forward. Simply have to let it be tended tonight. trusting that a well-tended fire, even after being neglected for a while, can always be brought back to warmth again. Closing. Coming back, we've spent a long time together tonight. Sitting with something heavy, something you've likely been carrying quietly for a while. I hope, even in small ways, it feels a little lighter now than it did at the start. You are not alone in this, even on nights when it feels that way most strongly. You are not weak for struggling, not broken for needing rest, not required to carry everything by yourself. If this helped tonight, I'd love for you to come back again, whenever the weight feels heavy, whenever you need somewhere quiet to set part of it down. Rest well. You've done enough today. Let sleep take care of the rest.